Act 2 opens with a raging storm, which is battering the ships of both the Turks and the Venetians, as those on shore in Cyprus anxiously await news of Othello and his fleet. The boiling seas are described in ominous and catastrophic terms. The wind-shaked surge with high and monstrous mane seems to cast water on the burning bear and to quench the guards of the ever-fixed pole. I never did like molestation view on the enchafed flood. The imagery of the stars being drenched by the turbulent waves conveys a sense of destruction of the natural order and foreshadows the violent disruption of Othello's steady, tranquil nature. The overwhelming character of the forces of evil unleashed on him by Iago are also poignantly suggested by Montano's rhetorical question as he watches the storm. What ribs of oak, when mountains melt on them, can hold the mortise? The ribs of oak are here describing the hulls of the Venetian ships, but might also be applied symbolically to Othello. The oak tree is known for its sturdy qualities and has long been used to represent strength and endurance. Yet the implication is here that even the most stable foundation can be rocked by an overpowering onslaught. As Montano, the governor of Cyprus, converses with two gentlemen on the quayside, it is revealed that the Turkish fleet has been scattered and Cassio's ship has arrived safely, but the ships bearing Othello and Desdemona are still at sea. As Cassio joins them, it is clear that both he and Montano hold Othello in high regard, and Cassio also speaks of Desdemona with respectful praise. When she arrives in the same ship as Iago, his wife Emilia, and Rodrigo, Cassio ensures that she is treated with honor. You men of Cyprus, let her have your knees. Hail to thee, lady, and the grace of heaven before, behind thee, and on every hand, enwheel thee round. Desdemona thanks him, but in the next breath asks, What tidings can you tell me of my lord? It is clear that all her devotion is directed to her husband, and that Cassio's attitude towards her is reverent and proper as the wife of his superior. Thus, the audience is fully aware that Iago's concocted narrative of a liaison between Cassio and Desdemona is grotesque and ridiculous. While Cassio shows his gallantry towards women generally, formally kissing Iago's wife Emilia as she arrives, Iago's attitude towards women is coarsely misogynistic, charging that you are pictures out of doors, bells in your parlours, wildcats in your kitchens, saints in your injuries, devils being offended, players in your housewifery, and housewives in your beds. The abuse and humiliation he directs towards his own wife is indicative of his corrosive and cynical attitude to relationships in general, and his own inability to form loving bonds. Perhaps another spur for his jealousy of Othello, who, he admits, will prove to Desdemona a most dear husband. The seething, malevolent envy within him leads to the curious pursuit of parallel tracks of thought within his mind. On the one hand, he is fully aware of his vicious scheming to frame Cassio and Desdemona as lovers by the twisting of their innocent words and actions to make them seem nefarious. He even casts himself in the role of a loathsome spider as he contemplates his plan while watching Cassio pay his courtesies to Desdemona. He takes her by the palm, "Aye, well said," whisper, "With as little a web as this will I ensnare as great a fly as Cassio." Yet at the same time he seeks to justify his evil machinations by convincing himself of the truth of his fabrications. That Cassio loves her, I do well believe it. That she loves him, 'tis apt and of great credit. The snaking of his thoughts in this soliloquy at the end of Scene 1, as they slip between self-delusion, honest admissions, tortuous paranoia, and naked vengeful hatred, reflect the bitter brew of a character that has encouraged the toxic sense of resentment within himself to the point where it can only be satisfied by the destruction of all that is good and honourable and pure around him. Iago is a devastating portrait of the wretchedness of evil, whose only comfort is to make others as wretched as himself. In a moment of revealing truthfulness, he states, "The more, howbeit that I endure him not, is of a constant, loving, noble nature." In other words, he admits that he hates what is good and true. To inflame his hatred, he has fed himself a diet of lies, that he has been cuckolded by Othello as well as Cassio, and is now tortured by his own baseless suspicions. "I do suspect the lusty Moor hath leaped into my seat, the thought whereof doth like a poisonous mineral gnaw my innards." It is this hellish misery, this evil of his own making, that he wishes to inflict on Othello. "Nothing can or shall content my soul till I am evened with him, wife for wife, or failing so, yet that I put the Moor at least into a jealousy so strong that judgment cannot cure." The final refinement of his malice is that he not only wants to ruin Othello's life, but he wants to make the Moor thank me, love me, and reward me for making him egregiously an ass, and practising upon his peace and quiet, even to madness. He relishes the idea of secretly mocking him, and thus gaining a sense of power and superiority over him, which he could never manage in any test of merit. By contrast, Othello's blissful happiness as he meets again with Desdemona after coming safely to shore seems to increase his general goodwill, which radiates out to all around him. He speaks of the great love of his old acquaintance in Cyprus, of the worthiness of the captain of his ship, and of good Iago. Desdemona he addresses as "my soul's joy," and exclaims that "if after every tempest come such calms, may the winds blow till they have wakened death, and let the labouring bark climb hills of seas Olympus high, and duck again as low as hells from heaven." This is a tragic foreshadowing of what will in fact happen figuratively to Othello, as Iago's demonic scheming will indeed waken death, and plunge Othello into the depths of hell. Only this time there will be no redeeming peace. which hints at the greater threat of the invisible forces of evil that Othello is oblivious to as he focuses on the physical terrors of nature, and is strongly redolent of Christ's admonition to "Fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." Iago is the demon whose corrosive hatred of goodness and purity recasts all around him in his own ugly image. As he works on Rodrigo's credulous mind to enact his plans, he refers to the marvelous stories of Othello's life that enraptured Desdemona as bragging, prating, and fantastical lies. He accuses Desdemona and Cassio of lechery and villainous thoughts because he took her hand, which even the gullible Rodrigo protests was but courtesy. Yet he, pursuing his own self-interest, agrees to follow Iago's instructions to entrap Cassio. Even so. When Othello proclaims an evening of celebration to mark the victory over the Turks, as well as his own nuptials, Iago tempts Cassio to drink more than he should, and Cassio gives in to the temptation, though he admits he has very poor and unhappy brains for drinking. Thus drunk, he is easily provoked into a brawl, striking both Rodrigo and Montano. When Othello appears demanding an explanation, Iago, who has orchestrated the whole train of events, acts the part of the concerned and innocent friend, claiming he does not know how the fight began. When pushed by both Othello and the injured Montano to say who began it, he condemns Cassio in a masterful stroke of dissimulation by declaring his loyalty to him. "Touch me not so near. I had rather have this tongue cut from my mouth than it should do offence to Michael Cassio." Othello is too easily gulled by his cunning, and exclaims, "I know, Iago, thy honesty and love doth mince this matter, making it light to Cassio." Without further investigation, he relieves Cassio of his duties, and concerns himself with comforting Desdemona, who has been disturbed by the fracas, and ushering her back to bed. Cassio, distraught at the wreck of his career, pours out his heart to the man who has destroyed it. Reputation, reputation, reputation. Oh, I have lost my reputation. I have lost the immortal part of myself, and what remains is bestial. My reputation, Iago, my reputation. Shakespeare again highlights the importance in human flourishing or suffering of the invisible and spiritual in influencing the material world. Though he has no physical wound, he declares to Iago that he is hurt past all surgery. The multiple repetitions of the word reputation sound like a lament for his lost honor, and without that animating spirit, he is merely bestial, a lump of flesh no better than a beast. The sensuous self-indulgence of drunkenness has acted like a demon to tempt him into depravity. To be now a sensible man, by and by a fool, and presently a beast. Oh, strange! Every inordinate cup is unblessed, and the ingredients is a devil. The reference to an unblessed cup resonates with the language of the Eucharist, the sacrament at the heart of Christian life and worship, when the blessed cup of wine is drunk as the blood of Christ, in remembrance of his sacrifice for the salvation of the world. What Cassio is expressing here is the Christian understanding of how we should integrate our body and soul so that they are in harmony with the divine purpose. To indulge in the inordinate cup, or excessive drinking, is to degrade our human nature and drag us down into chaos. With Cassio at this low ebb and desperate to find some way of rescuing his position, Iago manages to insinuate him further into his devious plans by persuading him to go to Desdemona to plead with her to speak to Othello on his behalf. In Iago's final soliloquy of the act, he revels in his power to manipulate the perception of those around him, to hide the rottenness of his envious manoeuvres beneath a show of benevolent concern. How am I then a villain to counsel Cassio to this parallel course directly to his good? Divinity of hell, when devils will the blackest sins put on, they do suggest at first with heavenly shows, as I do now. The striking contradiction contained in the phrase divinity of hell and the contrast between blackest sins and heavenly shows not only serve to confirm Iago's demonic inversion of the moral order, but also underline the essential binding together of evil and deceit, for no sinister design will ever succeed by admitting to its own corruption. It must steal the robes of respectability from others, so that it doubly harms by slandering those who are honourable and true. Thus, as Iago plots to poison Othello's mind by portraying Desdemona's pleas to reinstate Cassio as proof of an adulterous affair between them, he gloats that, by how much she strives to do him good, she shall undo her credit with the Moor. So will I turn her virtue into pitch, and out of her own goodness make the net that shall enmesh them all.